Hearing none, we will move to the consent agenda. What's the pleasure?
Motion to move forward. And approve.
Motion to move forward with the consent agenda and approve. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Number 3, payroll change notices. What's the pleasure?
Motion approved.
Motion to approve. Any discussion?
Yeah, I don't know what we're approving. I don't know how much we're paying for any of these positions. Find it odd that we're approving employees without knowing what they cost. Unless they fit into the budget.
The first employee is from Community Corrections. This is pretty much an approval. Their board has already approved it. And as for the B, the Sports and Enrichment for Parks and Rec, they have approved this. So they're just coming for our final blessing. And C would be from the prosecutor. It's in her budget. And if you scroll down to the attachments with the payroll changes, I believe the amount is on that one.
It is.
But what about A and B?
The hourly amount is on Miles. And the pay rate is on Taylor.
There's some reason why we try to avoid putting these numbers so that the public can just see them easily.
No, there's no reason. But we have the pay grade in steps, so that is usually what we put on there.
Helen?
Yes.
And the documentation that
You missed the period.
Community Corrections has
Okay, thank you.
approved this.
Yes. Gary?
At our last
Copies of those
meeting,
minutes.
we approved it at our last meeting. And it's the pay grade there, I didn't have the latest, the July with the actual pay, last year's pay grade. I didn't have the actual, so it has the pay grade on there, but not the actual amount. It's 41. I don't know the exact 41 change.
And we have something from Parks and Rec that says that they hired this person under their payroll and not ours.
They submitted this form for us for approval. So they are aware that they're hiring this one and they just need our final approval, but it would come out of their payroll.
Do I see that, please?
You want to see where the board approved it? What
Yes, ma'am.
he did
So Doug's signature, I don't know whose signature, Doug's signature is not good enough for the approval.
No, ma'am. He doesn't, he's not a board member, and he's not the head of the Parks and Rec.
Can you scroll down to 3B, please? 3B.
Mr. Commissioner, if I can, on ours, I can get you the minutes, but also our board vice president here, the sheriff, and he can attest that it has been approved.
Well, we're on to the Parks and Rec now, I believe. And all of a sudden, things are changing.
No, ma'am, just trying to make sure that we do, quit hiring people for Parks and Rec, and making them our employees.
Well, can we move on and see it, or,
And I've asked this question each time that a Parks and Rec person's come up to see where Parks and Rec is authorized to, and I've yet to see it.
All in favor of the payroll change notices, A through C, you moved to approve them, correct? I've already, okay, A through C. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay, I have 10:07, and we have a 10:05. Jake Glantz and Brooks Crislip from Water Infusion, for its Water Infusion discussion.
Want me to hear, is that good?
Sure.
Well, good morning. My name is Brooks Crislip. I'm the Director of Business Development with West Virginia American Water. I understand we've got a full agenda today, so I'll try to be brisk. We've got a quick presentation. We can navigate through this here. We're here for a couple reasons, one of which is just to introduce ourselves. we're neighbors. We operate in Lewis County here, right next door, so we've got a water treatment plant there in Weston, so we're nearby. And then also wanted to talk a little bit about some things we're doing as a company and things we're doing here moving forward that may or may not be of interest to Harrison County, but kind of wanted to put on your radar as potential points for discussion going forward. So I'll kind of hit highlights on this. I've got copies of packets here for the commission, so don't worry about it. If you miss something I say, you can catch up on it later, or give us a call and we'll talk some more. But again, as far as who we are, the parent company, American Water, is headquartered in Camden, New Jersey, right across the river from Philadelphia there. We operate in 46 states, a lot of military bases around the country, in addition to operating here in West Virginia. So we've got close to 7,000 employees across the country. Here in West Virginia, we have about a little over 300. We provide water service to around 30% of the state: Charleston, Huntington, Bluefield, Princeton, Weston areas, in addition to some other areas kind of scattered about. We've got a fair amount of wastewater treatment facilities. We've got water treatment facilities. We have a wastewater plant in Fayetteville and provide wastewater service in the town in addition to water for Fayetteville as well. I think this is probably an interesting, for purposes of the Harrison County Commission, to take a look at. The green area on the bottom of that map shows our operating area there in Weston. You can see kind of the spider web of how that system sort of works and where it sits. And as you can see, that sits just south of Clarksburg and the southern part of Harrison County. As far as our overall supplies here in West Virginia, the vast majority of it, over 99% of it, comes from surface water taken from a handful of different rivers. We have 8 water treatment plants. We do about 85 million gallons per day. And then we've got about 4,500 miles of main water line here throughout the state. So, yeah, good size operation. In addition to the water service, we do a lot of community work in the areas we work. We do a lot of grant programs. We've got a couple of discounted rates for customers that qualify, in addition to just a variety of educational and other community investment programs that we offer to the areas where we serve. The other thing we kind of wanted to talk about was something that has changed what we're doing as a company here in the last year or so. In the summer of 2020, this Senate Bill 551 was signed and became effective. What this bill does is a couple of things. One, it allows us to do a more modern valuation of systems throughout the state, to provide kind of an overall value and another overall price for what that system might be worth. 2, it allows a county or a municipality who opts to sell that system a lot more leeway and freedom with what they could do with those proceeds. So for a lot of systems, historically what we had done was largely focused on communities that needed sort of a bailout, for lack of a better term, maybe distressed or failing systems. Whereas now, with this legislation, we are able to look at and discuss with folks all over the state opportunities that might be, the system's working well and working fine, but isn't in need of upgrades, but it might just be something, a service that a county or a city no longer wants to provide and would like to shift those resources elsewhere throughout the county. So what we can do, and I won't read through this slide. This is just a high level overview of sort of procedurally how that goes. But from a high level, if that's something the county's ever interested in discussing, what we can do is basically walk. I think the Greater Harrison PSD is the closest PSD to our current operating area. We can kind of walk through that, go through a couple months of work on our end where we can provide an evaluation, and then we can present that to the commission and the PSD to kind of look at and see if a partnership of some sort might make sense, if a sale might make sense, if that would be something that could be advantageous to the community, to the county. Because a lot of as this next slide kind of lays out, there's a lot of freedom and leeway with what the county could do with any of those proceeds, in addition to not having to try to find grant money or dedicate existing resources to maintaining a facility. That would also could potentially provide some proceeds for the county to use really as they saw fit. That a sale with the proceeds would go to the general fund of the county and can kind of redirect those as needed. And then we would be providing the water service for that community. So, and we have, as I touched on, we operate all over the country, and we have done acquisitions of various sizes in various states, and we've kind of shifted gears here in West Virginia and are looking kind of all over the place. And wanted to just put that on the commission's radar, and if there's any, I've talked a lot, so any questions or any kind of comments that you guys have, happy to hear them. And again, we'd be happy to have further discussions if there's any interest in going in the future. I'll pause there for a second. If anything you guys could have any thoughts on our end?
I don't at this time. I
Okay.
don't know about the other two. But I appreciate the information.
Absolutely, and I'll leave these down here. You want?
No?
Sure. So that's contact information and a presentation I just gave in addition to some other company information there as well. So
Thank
please
you.
feel free to reach out. Any thoughts or questions in the future, we'd be happy to explore that further.
Where do you all have to go to get your rate increase?
We're regulated by the Public Service Commission. So any rate increases or any rate changes are regulated by the Public Service Commission. So we have to do a full rate case presentation there, and they have to thumbs up or thumbs down any expenditures we've made over the course of a few years between cases. But we're a fully regulated provider.
And you're a profit company.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay, number 4, minutes and or amended minutes. A, work session, meeting minutes. What's the pleasure?
Motion approved.
I have issues with them.
Okay, the motion's been made to approve. What are your issues?
The area where Mr. Amon talked is, to me, doesn't cover exactly what he said. There's a mix of the bonds, and I think it needs cleaned up. And I prefer not to make what this one paragraph says part of the record.
Okay, the motion's been made to approve. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No,
Please note Mr. Hinkle's opposition. Motion has carried. Number 5, requisitions, purchase orders, invoices.
Motion approved.
Motion has been made to approve number 5A. Any discussion?
yes, ma'am, I'd like to see invoice. Oh, 36971. see a copy of the contract for this? Otherwise, I need office tools. If we don't have a contract,
We do have a contract that Trey has drawn up.
I asked to see the contract to hire this.
Did you make a motion? Did you make a motion to approve?
If we're paying an invoice to somebody, that anybody can just send an invoice and we don't have a contract. We're additionally responsible to make sure that this money is spent right. If we don't have a contract with somebody, we shouldn't be writing them checks. I thought that Mr. Spellman was to help with American Rebuild, and now he's working on public service districts. It's confused. I see you two have approved these expenditures without a contract. Why is that?
I don't have a problem approving the requisition.
Without a contract?
I don't have a problem approving the requisition.
Okay. Been waiting for 6 months to see a contract.
I do not have it readily available. Can we approve with the, looking at the contract after? I don't wanna hold up the
The
meeting
motion's
too
been
long.
made to approve all of them, so
I'll make a motion to approve them all except for the invoice to Randy Spellman due to the lack of documentation that has been asked by this commissioner for the last 6 months and has to come through. Still don't know what Randy Spellman's job is, but it looks like he's got a pretty much catch-all. Bill this county $95 whenever he feels like somebody here asking him to do it. So,
yeah, make sure you get all that in there. John, please. Motion's been made to approve all of them with the exception of Mr. Spellman's. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No. Okay, we'll go to Mr. Treecost's motion. Motion was made to approve approve number 5, the list. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Please note the opposition, and the motion is carried. It is now 10:19, and I believe we have a 10:15 estate hearing, the estate of Wanda Camp. Are there individuals here for that estate? Okay, are you the only two?
Is there anyone out in the hallway who's here for that?
Camp, is that what it's for, camp?
Yeah, let's call for it out there. Estate of Camp, anyone here? Estate of Camp? There's nobody out there.
Okay, if you ladies will, Brian, you can come up here and take a seat? Or you come up and take a seat, I guess?
I guess.
If you would identify yourself for the record, please.
Patricia Wade Ashcraft.
Okay, Patricia Wade Ashcraft.
Well, Patricia Ashcraft Bar. They
Okay.
got it as Wade on the thing.
Okay, what is your,
My married name is Bar. And that was my aunt.
okay, who's Kimberly Heck?
I don't know.
Kimberly is not here. Kimberly Heck is not here. Okay, did you all receive notice of this hearing? Is
Yes,
that why you're
I
here?
got a phone call and then I got the paper saying that they were gonna do this.
Well, the person that asked to do this is not here.
I did that.
table.
So I don't see how we can move forward.
No, I would table it and try to reach out to Kimberly Hatt. She's the movement on the petition. And reschedule it.
I apologize for any inconvenience.
okay.
I thought maybe you were.
Sorry, motion to table.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
motion's been made to table this, and we will check the status of Ms. Heck. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Thomas.
Mama.
Yes,
We did have a gentleman sign up to speak who said he had parking trouble getting in here on time. I believe it's Rudy Darcy. And if I butchered your last name, my apologies.
okay.
you all have a problem if we go ahead and let him. Okay, Mr. Darcy, if you wanna.
Okay, this will be short. I would like to present you with more signatures opposing our paving of the rail trail in Shenster. We are hoping that you will have a personal epiphany that paving our rail trail is wrong and against the wishes of the residents of Shenster and the surrounding area. I'd like to present those to have them handed in and put with the other ones, and have Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
You do the same, thank you. Okay, number 6, exoneration, corrective tickets, joint property applications, A and B.
Motion to approve A and B.
Motion has been made to approve A and B. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion carried. Number 7, consideration of approval of project fund requisition concerning Series 2019 bonds issued for Charles Point Economic Opportunity Development District, Series 2015 A and B Development District, District Number 3, White Oaks Project Number 2, and Series 2008 A, Charles Point Number 2, North Land Bay Improvements. There are 2 A and B. To Municap.
Motion to approve A, $14,562.50, and B, $362.50, please.
Okay.
Questions?
Well, the motion has been made to approve number 7, A and B, for the amount stated. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'd like to know why the residents get in contact with Unicap.
Why the residents get in contact with Municap?
Yeah, Unicap and the residents of this development, as part of this bill where they've had discussions, and I'm just curious, is that Unicap's charged with discussing this with people that live there? Do you know, Terry?
Do you have any information on that, Jason?
I don't have any information on that. My name's Jason Turner, Stephen Johnson. I'm not sure what that, I have not seen that particular invoice and what that pertains to. I will note, however, that Unicap does a good deal of work with the Charles Point Community Enhancement District Board in the annual assessment, the CED assessments on folks who live within that district. And part of the notice process for those assessments involves a letter that does include a phone number for Unicap for any questions that any landowners might have regarding the assessments. So it is entirely possible that someone who received that letter contacted Unicap with questions, and Unicap answered those questions. But I've not seen the invoice. I'm not familiar with exactly what that invoice is for. That's my assumption. It's probably something of that nature.
And I noticed that they provided a billing file to you, for what purposes?
Provide a billing file to me.
Yep.
Again, I'm not familiar with that invoice. I have not seen it. So I can't really speak on that.
Who determines that these are good charges?
Okay, so this is the
Either Unicap invoices, I'm just curious, who says this $7,000 bill, everything that's on it, is a good pay? Do you all go over it? Do we go over it, Gina? Do we verify these numbers? Or do we just pay them?
Michelle takes care of the requisitions as they come in, so there's no verification that I know of that's being done.
We don't do a verification on our end, but they are sent over by Mr. Amon to tell us to proceed.
And this money's coming out of the funds from, bonds.
That is correct.
These would be administrative expenses, which would come out of the tax increment revenues,
Okay.
not out of the bond proceeds.
Excellent. Then there is some money for that in there.
Sure.
I was just curious, when I sat down and read through some of this, why we were talking to homeowners.
Well, again, I'm not familiar with it, that's my assumption is that a homeowner probably received a letter, more than one homeowner received a letter, had questions, and contacted the number on the letter, which is the district administrator, which is,
Okay, thank you.
And Commissioner Hinkle, I have seen that in other places, where the homeowners do call in to answer your question.
Any further discussion?
No, ma'am.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Number 8, consideration of approval of project fund requisitions for the payment of costs associated with General Services Administration Building project to be financed from proceeds of the Series 2020 bonds issued for the Harrison County Building Commission, A, B, and C.
Motion to approve A through C, please.
Okay, motion has been made to approve 8A through C. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Number 9, request to travel, James Leonard. Does anybody want to speak to that?
That was yesterday. He went to Morgantown to take an exam for his code enforcement.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve number 9. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Why are we sending people for code enforcement?
He does not have his certification.
Do you
And
need that certification to tell somebody their house is crashed?
my understanding is yes, he does. Charlotte?
Yes.
So that's in code that we can't tell somebody that they're maybe clean the house up without this.
Yes.
And this code that he went and learned was just code on garbage?
And no, it's zoning. It was part of the zoning code. In order to get your credentials, you have to do all of them.
So we have people on staff that are sent to learn code and zoning just so that they can tell somebody to clean up garbage, but not to have zoning or code on how they build something or where they build it. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's basically property maintenance. It's not the building codes per se, because we don't have the building codes, but we do have the property maintenance. We were allowed to adopt the property maintenance alone, and that's what we did do. And in order to keep going with that, they need to keep up with their credentials, and they need to proceed on tests.
If y'all could supply me a copy of the code that says that they can't go and come back and tell us a piece of property needs cleaned up without these certificate, or with, if they need these certifications, I would appreciate it, because I'm trying to understand anybody in this room can go out and look and tell a piece of property needs cleaned up without the other. Thank you.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, please note the opposition and the motion carried. Okay, I think we have a 10:30 funding request for Historic Clarksburg, West Virginia Cemetery Preservation Alliance.
Requested. And this may not be the most up-to-date sponsorship package, but it gives you some information on the thrill illusionist that we've used for several years. The request is, previously we've requested funds for a cabaret night several years back. It was granted. We're just an organization trying to take care of some cemeteries that had fallen to the wayside over the years. We care for the Odd Fellows down the street over on South Chestnut. We also since acquired the Salem Odd Fellows, and XTO has donated back in 2018 the Fraternal Memorial Park over in Anmore, which is historically a African American cemetery. Our funding is reliant mostly on donations. I'm not sure what other questions you may have.
Do you have a board?
Yes.
Here's the list. It was not in the packet, so I asked him to bring this to me.
We formed in 2016. Our board has changed since then. That's the most up to
Anybody
date.
else? What do you use the funds for?
Maintenance, restoration. We're trying to, for the last couple of years, it's been slow going, to restore most of the vandalism that happened in the Clarksburg Cemetery, as well as some grading and stuff for throughways. Salem cost us roughly $21,000 just in lawn care and maintenance last year. We were fortunate enough to get a perpetual care fund from the Odd Fellows when they transferred it to us. With Salem, we were not so fortunate with the Clarksburg one when we acquired that, due to the fact that the prior owner had misappropriated the funds. Mr. Treecost over there is quite familiar with that, as he was on city council during that time.
Are there grant funds for this kind of? there's-
I've reached out to SHPO numerous times. I've spoken to the governor's office. I'm even trying to get one of those license plate things like you see for special purposes, where a percentage of that would be donated. I've spoken to Ben Queen, Clay Riley, Laura Kimball, and Danny Hamrick, as far as other potential funding coming out of the state, because this isn't just a county issue, it's a statewide issue. You estimate probably roughly 1/3 of cemeteries fall into poor conditions because people walk away from them after so long. Perpetual care organizations fall apart, like that's what's going on with the Odd Fellows. I mean, the Masons used to have Green Lawn and Elkview, and then there was a hiccup over the years with that, it became private owned. So, I mean, it's just unfortunate that things like that happen. And nobody else really seems to want to step up to the plate. I mean, we've even tried to, over the years, trying to pass the Clarksburg in case of severe issues, lack of funding, to Clarksburg City Council, the municipality. Because, I mean, we're a nonprofit organization, where our funds aren't gonna last forever. And it's gonna really, 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 really hurt us when we start getting dinged for grass violations.
How do you own these cemeteries?
What's that?
You own these cemeteries?
The nonprofit organization does.
So there are people still using them for burial?
Occasionally. Salem is the most active. The Fraternal Memorial Park hasn't seen a burial probably in 30, 40, let's see, let's go back to the 70s, probably about 50 years. And the Odd Fellows Cemetery in Clarksburg, last burial was 2014, I believe. There's still family around that occasionally reach out for plots to be interred. We don't reap any financial benefit from that because those plots were already sold over the years.
How many abandoned cemeteries are there in Harrison County?
Off the top of my head, can't say for certain. I've encountered quite a few that actually have owners, but have been kept up in such poor condition. Like you have Enon Baptist over on, is that Flunderation Tunnel? That one, I've had people call and reach out to me and I just direct them because I've had to do research to find out who actually owned it and cared for it. And then there's Hepzibah. I've had folks reach out to me about that one. And it's kind of funny, the owner actually offered to sell it for 15 grand, and I'm like, no, cemeteries aren't profitable. You know, you don't have any perpetual care funds yourself, why are you gonna try to sell something?
And in this email, this is your financial statement, is that correct?
Yes.
And you have a preliminary ending balance as of 12/2,
Yes.
$63,000?
Yeah. Most of that's tied up in kind of like CDs, money market, bonds, to try to accrue interest since it's a perpetual care fund for the Salem Oddfellow Cemetery in order to, in the hopes, cover at least 1/10 of the maintenance cost.
Now, when you say maintenance, what are you talking about?
Well, lawn care itself for just Salem was probably about 18,000. When we include Clarksburg with that, it was about 21,000. Clarksburg City Council has been gracious over the last several years to donate an amount that ranges between, let's see, our low end was 1,000, high end was 3,000. It just depends on their feeling for that year. They've been really, really supportive of basically anything I ask for that they can provide for that cemetery. XTO Energy, they committed to helping us for a few years, but due to the COVID and the downturn and all that, they're kind of stepped away for the last year. And Salem, their council donated at least $1,400 to cover one mow, which is gracious of them. The funds that I'm requesting will just be able to cover the partial sponsorship fee for our fundraiser, which is David Da Vinci. He roughly charges $2,500, just a flat fee.
What kind of fundraiser are you having?
David Da Vinci Thrill Illusionist, September 9th, 2022.
Where's this going to be?
I'm sorry?
Where is it going to be?
Robinson Ground.
Okay, I think now, after. I
That's the
ask that
venue
question.
we've used for the last several years. Kind of like to keep it in Clarksburg to kind of draw some economic
I don't have any
viability as
further
well.
questions.
What about other counties, how do they handle it?
Honestly, I'm not sure. Never really reached out to any other counties. I've paid attention to like Fairmont, how they handle their cemetery. I've actually been fortunate enough, since I do real estate, to sell a few properties around one of their cemeteries, and just from what I see, it's not really kept up the greatest. And from what neighbors said, this is one over by Palatine on Fairmont, that they've struggled for years as well. The biggest problem is people moved out of the area that have family buried there. With Salem, I was fortunate enough to get a donors list from the Oddfellows that I've just updated and managed to keep in touch with the families that are still there, still around. Even though probably about 5% of those letters came back returned to sender due to deaths and other unforeseen circumstances.
Charlotte, are there requirements for cemeteries that the county oversees?
We do not oversee any cemeteries.
So we have no.
Well, there's a
they can
cemetery
let
on
their place go
the
and
grounds of the rec center.
disarray and
I don't know
we
who owns
don't
that
have
one.
any.
Other than cutting grass, no. That's, I do get a lot of phone calls about cemeteries, and I usually just point them in the state's direction because there's, I mean, we don't have anything to do with them.
Madam President, I'll make the motion that upon receiving an invoice for grass cutting, that we'll pay up to $500 for you.
Okay.
Okay, the motion's been made upon receipt of an invoice that the commission would pay up to $500. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion carried.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Christmas to you too, Patsy.
Number 10, review, discuss, consider monthly minutes, financial information from A, B, and C. What's the pleasure?
Motion for A through C.
Okay, motion's been made to approve A through C. Any discussion? I noticed that Hepzibah is meeting at Sun Valley. Do we know what that's why?
Yes. Because ever since, Rusty passed, they've pretty much closed that up and then they've moved everybody to Sun Valley.
Oh, okay.
So the whole office is there.
Okay. I just happened to notice that. Thank you. Okay. Motion to approve number 10, A through C. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay, number 11, review, discuss, consider Appalachia HIDA sub-award agreement. Is that you, Gina?
Yes, you're requesting the commission to allow the president to fix her signature on the sub-agreement. It's for the HIDA grant, which HIDA stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, and it pays for overtime costs from the Greater Harrison County Drug Task Force for the year.
Motion to
And we
approve.
got $42,250.
That's fabulous.
Okay, motion's been made to approve.
Is there anything else that you need to tell us about that?
I'm sorry.
Can you continue on with what this is about, please? The grant.
Do you want to add to it, Robert?
I'll be happy to. This funding that we get from HIDA, we have 2 full-time deputies that are assigned to the Greater Harrison Drug and Violent Crime Task Force, and we have a canine officer assigned to the Mountaineer Drug Interdiction Team. And a portion of it, the greater portion of it, goes to pay overtime for the 2 full-time deputies that are assigned to the Drug Task Force. And then there's a small amount at the bottom, I can't remember, like $4,500.
For a part-time, that was my question.
That's the drug interdiction team, the MHIT, as a lot of people
Okay.
call it. And what these funds do is, we pay out of county general their regular funds, but their overtime's covered by this. And this pretty well covers them for the year. We don't dip much over that. And if you remember when we talked about the extra funding and we broke it down, that's part of that breakdown, the $42,250.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And so it's good. It's a good savings for us countywide.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion? Okay. Motion's been made to approve. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, motion carried. Number 12, review, discuss, consider acting upon a proposed resolution regarding the setting of a public hearing date with respect to the proposed amendment of the project plan for the Economic Opportunity Development District in Harrison County, known and designated as Charles Point Economic Opportunity Development District. A, permit obligation issued by the County Commission for funding projects in the district, financing obligations to have term of 30 years from the date of issuance of such financing obligations, and B, establish December 31st, 2052 as the date on which the TIF district shall terminate. Mr. Turner?
Morning, Commissioners. Pleasure to be in front of you again. It's been a while. This is, as you may recall, from the last time that Tom Amon from Steptoe & Johnson was here, and also for the record, once again, my name is Jason Turner from Steptoe & Johnson, Bond Counsel for the County Commission. Last time that Tom Amon was here to discuss the Charles Point Special Financing Districts with the Commission,
There was some general discussion of the current status of the districts and the bonds issued for those districts. Then the commission went into executive session to talk about some planning and some discussion of what might be needed to do some restructuring of the currently outstanding bonds. My understanding is that the indication from the commission at that point was that we should proceed with the official actions that would be needed as appropriate. And so this is the first consideration, a procedural step really of a setting of a public hearing for the excise tax district at Charles Point to setting up a public hearing for January 5th, after which the commission would take its first actual substantive vote to consider sending an application to the West Virginia Department of Economic Development, formerly known as the Development Office, for approval of this amendment to the project plan for the excise tax district. This will do two things. If it is approved, it would set, or it would provide as the item here says, would provide for bond maturities to be able to extend from 30 years from issuance of bonds rather than 30 years from the creation of the district. That's what is in the act and is approved by the act, and would also set an expiration date of 2052 for the district. This is a date that was arrived at after discussion with the development office about this potential application. So there are two purposes here that would be met by this change in the plan for the district. One, to provide some flexibility to allow for the restructuring of the 2019 excise tax bonds that is needed due to the delays of the Charles Point Crossing project. The Menards, they've had to delay their construction as a result of the pandemic. And then to also allow to the commission to finance some improvements that would be needed for another project in the district that could result in potentially significant revenues in the district and jobs in the county. So again, this is a preliminary step, procedural step, just to set the public hearing date and authorize us to publish a notice of public hearing in both the Exponent Telegram and the Shinston News and Harrison County Journal.
Has the public notice has already been done, hasn't it?
It has not.
It has not?
It has not. It would be published tomorrow in both those papers. Which complies with the 20-day notice requirement of the EODD Act prior to the public hearing. You have to publish 20 days prior to the public hearing.
Madam President, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution presented regarding Charles Point EODD application to West Virginia Development Office.
The motion has been made to adopt the resolution as stated by Commissioner Treecost. Any further discussion?
Yes, ma'am. Want to be in public, we can be in public, or we can go into executive session, but I have issues with how the financing obligations are going to be. And I'd like a better explanation because I think there's a issue between what people think it says and where we're going with it. And I think we need to limit if we're going to go forward with this 30-year new start over. I have, I'm not sure where the state stands with it or where we stand if we're going to allow any obligations to get a new bike every 30 years if they want to come back and refinance.
Well, again, I would note that
This commission needs to discuss if we're going to let that bite happen every 30 years.
Understand.
5 years in, they want to do another 30 years. I'll get to you in a minute, Jason.
Of course, yes.
I think that it's an issue.
It's not a 30-year.
So-
I mean, it started as a 30-year.
So it was originally the order that was entered by the county commission in 2012
Yes, sir.
stated that didn't really have a termination date on the district, just stated that any bonds issued could only have a maturity 30 years from the creation.
Correct.
That is above and beyond what is in the EODD Act, which allows for, states that bonds cannot have maturity longer than 30 years from date of issuance. Now, if your concern is that this would just keep happening every 30 years, I think the second part of this, which is to establish a hard end date of 2052 on the district, would kind of cut that off, because that, regardless of whether any bonds have been issued that have a 30-year from date of issuance maturity, once the district is terminated, there's nothing more that you could do to pay any bonds. So that would kind of set a hard date on that. I'm sorry?
To refinance and roll other lines into it doesn't change that.
Correct.
Then why are we doing it now?
To allow for the restructuring of the 19 bonds that is needed as a result of the delays at Charles Point Crossing, to provide, some capitalized interest for a longer period of time, so those bonds don't go into default, while we give Menard some time to build their store and other development to come in, and then to provide the possibility for financing the improvements that would be needed for the other project that has been identified, to provide some flexibility for those.
We're talking about refinancing bonds, and then you want to come back in and add the other money to this bond, or at least when we're going to issue new bonds.
Possibly. This is about providing the flexibility to do those.
And tell me if I'm wrong, Jason, but he's got a $400 million bite at the apple, let's just say, or $100 million, however you want to look at it. We issue the bonds. He comes up with another new project. We don't have to tie the two together, correct?
I'm not sure I understand what you're asking.
He's got 50 million over here working, and he wants 20 million to go over here and start a new project in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
He can do that based on that without tying it to the other. Is that not correct?
Again, I'm not sure I'm following what you're saying. Are you saying that you could issue more than one series of bonds, or?
Yes.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So this new project, we could issue bonds for it, and it'll line.
If the revenues were sufficient that it could meet whatever tests for additional bonds were set forth. Now, and again, let me reiterate, this being a procedural step, just setting a public hearing. The public hearing would be an opportunity for anyone who wanted to come and talk and either speak in favor of or not in favor of submitting the application. I'm sorry?
What information will we have for him?
Well, we have the application. What other information? I mean, what if? And again,
and I don't even have the information to know that this is even possible. We asked for that at the last meeting.
The information needed to know if what was possible, sir.
Refinance.
Okay.
Public doesn't deserve that information.
I would not say they do or don't deserve it. That's not really the point of this particular action.
What's the point of this particular action?
To set a public hearing date for consideration of whether the application should be submitted to the State Development Office, and to authorize the publication of notice of public hearing for that public hearing. Now, I'm sure if I believe there were some items that were requested yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, and I assume those are part of what you're looking for, and so I believe we're in the process of trying to get those items. Anything else that you or the other commissioners have that you'd like to see before that, we have until January 5th to get that, any requests you may have.
Just to reiterate, Jason, the citizens of Harrison County aren't on the hook for any of this.
Correct.
Thank you, sir.
Correct. These would all be bonds that would be payable out of the excise tax revenues in the excise tax district solely.
Thank you, sir.
Still my brother.
Any other questions, Commissioner Hinkle?
Yeah, I'm I still have issues with the 30 years.
The 30-year?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if we're gonna do this, and this is what the developer wants to do, then this is the one-time bite at the apple on these bonds. We're not gonna do another 30 years again. Because, I mean, these bonds, we all know when we started TIF, I won't say we all know, but when we started TIF, we know the clock starts ticking, and if you can't get anything done, the clock ticks away. And when you decide to take that bite at the apple and sell your bonds, if you run for 10 years without selling the bonds, you know you only got 20 years left on the bond. It's just a fact of life. And then to turn around and because you couldn't get anything done the first 10 years, to refinance and get 10 more years bite at the apple. And then if something doesn't happen again, I don't want to come back and get another 10-year bite at the apple. So I'd like to see something in here that says we're willing to do this, but we're not going to keep rolling it over and rolling it over. I don't know, staff, legals looked at it, but I think that the 30-year comment, I'm not even sure where that stands with the state.
Well, it has been discussed with the state, but again, this is the...
Has the tax department approved this yet?
I don't believe the tax department has to approve it, but it will be considered by the Department of Economic Development for approval. And then would then, after that, then come back to the commission one more time for adoption of an order. And so, again, this is a first procedural step. The first substantive step would be after the public hearing on January 5th.
And what's the date, what's the time for that, and where's the location?
It will be here at, I believe it is 10:05 a.m.
Seriously? Don't make the public come in here at 10:05 in the morning, comment.
That is what we thought about, because it'll be a regular commission meeting day.
We can do by Zoom.
Call the question, Madam President.
And maybe, I don't want to interject, but,
Trey, we're good.
well, just maybe to clarify his question, I mean, it sounds like Commissioner Hinkle's just looking for some market information about, is the 30 years dictated by the market? Is that what the underwriters are requiring? Maybe if we can get him some of that information, that would be helpful to look at these issues, and certainly tying the two together might be something that's mandated on the financing side. But we don't have to get into that today, but just to get him the information.
Between now and...
Yes, yeah.
The 30 years is simply what is authorized statutorily by the EODD Act. That bonds cannot have maturity beyond 30 years from their date of issuance.
Correct.
That's
I
simply
don't
that.
argue that.
That's what the act says.
But we're taking the old bonds, we've already, you know, we didn't do it the last time, that's why my question is. We took old bonds the last time, rolled them into this one, and they raised. Now this time, we're taking old bonds and going all the way 30 years.
Well, again,
We did one excise tax, and then we did the second one. When we did the second one, we paid off the first one, correct?
it paid off the 2015 bonds, correct?
And we didn't extend 30 years.
Because we could not, because of the limit that was set forth in the original county order, that no
Right,
bonds
so
could
now
have
the
maturities
now the
beyond 30
county's
years from
making
date of creation of the
decision
district.
To go 30 years when you guys want to refinance.
Well, again, the 2052 hard termination date of the district would eliminate any 30 years at any time beyond 2022.
Because they can't go beyond
They cannot,
2022.
no bonds would be able to have a maturity beyond that termination date. And so, you know, you're concerned about continually having a rollover of 30 years, I'm not sure that's relevant.
Okay. Motion has been made. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you, Jay.
Can I step up and have you sign a few things before we move
Sure.
on? All right. Well, I don't know who's up here, do I? All right, there's 3 of these for you. Susan, if you wouldn't mind to do that. And John, those 3 for you. I'll leave one here with Laura for the record. Thank you. And then this is a copy of the application, which would need to be on a record in the clerk's office downstairs.
Along with this, right?
I'll give this to Laura. Thank you very much.
Jason.
Okay, number 13, review, discuss resolution authorizing the acceptance of the West Virginia Justice Assistant Grant, also known as JAG grant program.
Yeah, it's just getting your, signature on the or not the application, but the award. And it's for $30,000 and it partially pays for the PROs at 3 of our high schools. And the Board of Education pays like 50,000. We get the grant for 30, the board pays 50, and then 60. And then, of course, the rest of it is out of the sheriff's budget.
What's the pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve the resolution. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Number 14, review, discuss, consider action in relation to Governor Jim Justice declaring Thursday, December 23rd and Thursday, December 30th as half-day state holidays.
Motion to approve and follow the governor's lead.
Motion to approve and follow the governor's lead. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Number 15, review, discuss, consider GSA change order number 5.
Change order number 5 is to extend UT&C conduits and fiber into the courthouse to connect the courthouse and the GSA building.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve the change order number 5 for the GSA. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Can we go ahead and do 18 and come back to 16 and 17? What do you think?
Yeah.
You have a problem with that? Okay. Number 18, review, discuss, consider extending the due date that briefs are due from the October 2021 Antero of Assessments Appeals hearing. Is that you?
Sure. Antero had the transcript prepared, and there was some confusion as to sharing of the transcript with all the parties, nobody's fault. So we thought it'd be best to go ahead and set a firm deadline of January 14th. It would also give all the parties a little bit more time than initially discussed, given the holidays and the timing of delivery of the transcript. But all the parties are invited to file supplemental briefs if they want to, or opening briefs, or closing briefs. And we just felt like it would be the fairest thing to do to everybody involved. That's where it comes from.
Motion approved. Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
So the motion would be to extend the deadline to January 14th, 2022.
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any need for a work session to go over this with the commission?
Once the briefs are all received, we might talk about having a work session for you all. But at this point, I don't think there's any impetus to go ahead and set one. Let's get them all in.
Because we don't know what they're gonna
Correct.
say.
Correct.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Okay, number 16, review, discuss, consider adoption of intergovernmental agreement between Harrison County Commission and Harrison County Solid Waste Authority for hiring / creation of litter control officer and implementation of county litter control program. Who wants to go first?
Laura and I are kind of looking at each other. So we have a gentleman here from Raleigh County today, and the thought process between Laura and myself and Charlotte was to get Raleigh County up here and talk to you all about how this works, how it has operated historically from approximately 2014 to present, and this
2004.
2004.
I started in 4.
Okay, well, that's what I saw, the financial data was from 2014. But to answer any questions that you all might have collectively, in terms of the legal side, I've looked at 713 FF at length, I've looked at 713 KK, which is our current framework. It varies across the state how people do things. It can be done if you all want to maintain what we have going with planning in terms of, call them the housing nuisances, the more real property, with a litter control officer position as well. Now, it's entirely up to you all, but we can structure it and it can work to have both if you all want to add that tool to what we do in Harrison County. And can I get your name?
Mitch Barley.
And Mitch Barley came up to speak with you all and to answer questions about really the logistics, how it interacts with the sheriff's office, for example, because there is overlap, and really the overall structure. And some of our conversations have centered on things, for example, the county tears down a lot of properties pursuant to our current program. Sometimes we take the properties, oftentimes we end up with a lien on the property which is uncollectible unless we sell the property or a sale occurs and we're paid from the proceeds. We felt like this may be a different tool and maybe a beneficial tool because it does generate some revenue without creating an associated liability on our books, where we're either taking property or we're paying for a demolition because the owners don't have the funds to cover the cost of the demo under the remediation agreement. So that's the framework. I'm happy to answer any legal questions you all have about this. In terms of how this would work, if the county would want to go down this route, we would need to update your framework for enforcement before the county hired a litter control officer. What I mean by that is either a separate ordinance for the litter control position and framework, or a joint ordinance which merges the two but keeps them separate in terms of planning, handling the real property nuisances versus litter control handling the statutory authority associated with what a litter control officer can do. Historically, the county, we've talked about this for a long period of time actually, and litter control would require you all to establish a separate enforcement agency to look over that position. That's in the statute. And that was one of the historical hang-ups, is did the county want to create another body within our framework? But again, it certainly can be done, and Mr. Barlow's here to answer your questions. And I talk too much. Laura, what do you want to add?
I think let's let Mr. Barlow talk first and answer some questions, and then we'll add to it.
Okay. Come join us.
Sure.
Front and center.
I got the lucky chair with the glitter in it, so you all feel free to laugh at the under parts of me there. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for making the trip up here.
Oh, it was a beautiful trip. What would you all like to know? I can start off just by telling you, in Raleigh County, we have 2 litter control officers. The litter control officer program was started in 2004. They had 1 officer at the time, and in 2013 it grew to the two officer program. There's enough work for 3 officers, to tell you the truth. We do not handle things in Raleigh County inside of the municipalities because we have so many cases on the outskirts of the city limits, and the cities in Raleigh County, Beckley has a pretty large department, and so their police officers generally could take care of things, but they opted to have their city code enforcement do it. And I always say that to let you know that all the things that we do are outside of our municipalities in Raleigh County. That doesn't mean that you couldn't have somebody cover whatever you wanted in Harrison County. We are certified law enforcement officers in Raleigh County. Both of us retired from the sheriff's office and moved over into the litter control officer jobs. We handle litter complaints. There are a few other things that we do. Abandoned building is not one of them that we do in Raleigh County. Abandoned, dilapidated structures. The other litter control officer is a member of the board where he sits in on the meetings and either approves or disapproves, accepts the complaints. However, as far as going out and trying to enforce codes on abandoned or dilapidated structures, we do not do that. One other day a month, we allocate to escort the county engineer around to do the inspections on these buildings. But as far as any other connection to that, I just heard him bring that up, so I wanted to clarify that. We do, however, outside of just litter, we help the other agencies in some ways there in Raleigh County. We help them dispose of evidence, and they clean out their evidence rooms and stuff, and everything that has been taken care of by court order. We do supervise the destruction of that, document it, and that tends to help and save the law enforcement agencies around us some time. And we've kind of worked out a little deal there with the drug enforcement agency that's not actually part of the policy, but they do occasionally ask us, y'all need a pair of boots, you need some kind of piece of equipment or something like that, and so it saves the county and the solid waste authority some money there in funding our equipment. That's just a pretty nice little deal that we worked out with the drug task force. However, on a day-to-day basis, we will take litter complaints. They either come in through calls, or we go out into the county, into areas and look for litter, look for trash dumps on the back roads and trails, and then we search through them, find out who's responsible for them, or and we have a day report agency in Raleigh County, and so once a week we get to use the day report workers to help them work off their community service hours.
Listen, Gary.
By cleaning up these dump sites. Residential garbage, we handle complaints residentially. If you have a neighbor next door that has 30 bags of trash on their porch, then you call litter control and we go out and we will issue them what's called a notice of violation, that they are violating state code by having garbage on their property in excessive amounts. Or, well, the law reads that you have to have trash service, or you have to have receipts where you go to the landfill at least once every 30 days. So several times I'll come out, depending on when the last free day was, because that's the first thing you always hear. Well, we're waiting on free day at our landfill. So we'll go out, and if free day was last week, then they missed it, and I'll go ahead and issue them a notice of violation. If we're coming up on free day, then I may revisit them the following week, and if it's still there, issue them a notice of violation. If I may, I brought a sample of what I'm referring to with our notice of violation. Ours is carbon copied. We will go over with the individual who has the violation there, explain to them what all needs to be cleaned up, and give them a realistic time frame of getting that done. We'll have them sign off on the cleanup order, the notice of violation. Then we will give them a copy of that. We take photographs and document what was there, and then we come back on the date that we specify to see that it has been corrected. We have the ability to work with these folks. Sometimes we'll come back and you can tell they've really been busting their tail to get the place cleaned up and may not have finished, and so we can grant them an extension. We do that pretty often. And because the goal is to get your neighborhoods cleaned up, not to see how many tickets you can write or how many warrants you can issue, but to get the neighborhoods cleaned up. So we work with folks, and sometimes they're done in the first date that we give them, and sometimes I have worked with one place that was back up in a hollow. I worked with them for almost a year, but they brought in 28,000 pounds of garbage off of their property. So, you know, it's kind of funny. It turned out to be a burn pile complaint. And I went over and was taking pictures of the burn pile in the front yard and happened to walk around behind the house. And there was a mound of trash the height of their house behind it that you couldn't see from the road. And so we started working on it. The more they cleaned, the better they felt about it and the harder they worked. It was nice. I was on a first name basis with the whole family by the time we were finished. And there was a birth in the family during that time. So yeah. In my last visit with them to get their last receipts, I pulled up and he comes running out, "Mr. Barley, here's the receipts." And I said, "First off, I want to know if you have a baby here yet." And they bring the baby out and hand it right in the truck to me. So it's a good opportunity to work with your citizenry and to do some community policing and to make your county a nicer looking place. I've got another piece of paper here that is just sort of a tally of what the two of us accomplished between when I started in September of 14 and December of 2020. And this was something that I turned into our county commission back in the first part of the year. If you'd like to look at that, and if you have any questions over anything there.
This should be in your packet.
Maybe. We started off being funded by the Solid Waste Authority. The county commission we were county commission employees, county employees. That way we were bonded, we were law enforcement certified, we were bonded the same way the sheriff and the deputies were. The county commission would pay us and then invoice the Solid Waste Authority to be refunded what they'd paid out to us. Somewhere along the way, the county commission decided that the program was successful and they enjoyed it and they liked it so much that they decided to pick up the tab for the litter control officers. Now, my office is still at the Solid Waste Authority at the landfill, and the landfill furnishes us, or the Solid Waste Authority, it furnishes us our vehicles, and we do several grants to pick up equipment. We have equipped our vehicles with off-road bumpers and winches to help aid in cleaning up trash dumps that are over the side of some pretty steep hills down in our area, and to help pull tires up the sides of the mountains and all that sort of thing. We've equipped our trucks pretty nicely, and because we are certified police officers, we've also equipped our trucks with blue lights and the regular police equipment, because being certified, we are also able to make traffic stops. A non-certified litter control officer can enforce any law within Chapter 22 of the code, any litter infraction within Chapter 22 of the code. That was a little bit of a problem for me because I was a deputy for 30 years, and I would pull up in traffic and someone would throw a McDonald's bag out in front of me, and I couldn't stop them. I couldn't do anything about it because that's littering from a vehicle, and that's Chapter 17. And since we were certified, we went ahead and got a bill together and made an amendment to had an amendment passed in Charleston that allows litter control officers who are certified police officers to enforce litter laws from any chapter in the code.
I can't believe we waited this long to be a part of this. This is what we've always needed.
It's a really good program. I'm not just saying that because I enjoy my job, but it's a really good program. I guarantee you the sheriff who I saw here, and he's, judging by the marks on his sleeve, he's got about the same amount of time in this work that I do. I can guarantee you that his officers, his deputies, have in their own minds, if nothing else, more important things to do than fool with trash piles. And if it's anything like it is down south, then they're pretty busy. And we get to alleviate a lot of things that they don't wanna fool with anyway. And it's the best job I've ever had as far as the citizenry calling in and complimenting us.
Thank you.
They love it, they love it.
Thank you from the Solid Waste Authority. Thank you. And Sheriff, thank you.
So who do you report to?
Well, I can report to the county commission or the solid waste authority. I just consider both of them my bosses. They are happy with the job that we do, and they, the only time we really hear from either one of them is when somebody calls them directly. If it's someone it's, an old friend or whatever, and he calls and says, look, I got a fellow lives out here by me, and he's bringing rats into the neighborhood. Then I'll hear from the commission then, and they'll say, hey, could you check this place out? The good thing is that about 7 or 8 times out of 10 that I get one of those calls, I've already been there, and the guy's already under one of my NOVs. But as far as I get paid by the county commission, my office is in the Solid Waste Authority building, so I consider both of them my bosses, and I've not had any conflicts between the two of them yet. So I've never been caught betwixt the two, as you might want to say, so far.
Yeah, Madam President, I'll make the motion to adopt.
I have a couple more questions. Please. I have a thing here from Preston County. It looks like they set a commission up. Does Raleigh County have a commission to oversee you all, or are you all strictly under solid waste in the county?
We work under solid waste in the county. There's no commission for the litter control program.
Am I understanding that right, Trey, that we can form a commission to oversee this? Like,
You could. The proposal from the Solid Waste Authority is that they would manage the day-to-day affairs under the intergovernmental agreement. Now, the county would have to create an enforcement agency where the litter complaints would ultimately come within the ordinance.
I may say that we get litter complaints on a direct line into our office. We get litter complaints through the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, and we get litter complaints from a lot of the police officers who go out to a residence and they say, hey, we were out there on a domestic, y'all need to go check that place out. And we do, and so we get litter complaints from hunters. March and April are big months for litter complaints because your spring gobbler hunters are going into the woods and finding trash piles that have been left there during the winter, and they're easily visible because the foliage isn't out yet. We get complaints in the spring, especially from neighbors who are doing spring cleaning and look next door and realize their other neighbors not doing what they're doing. So they call in and say, hey, come out here and make them clean up. And so we get complaints from everywhere. And we field them all. It's efficient.
you feel it's necessary that this job requires somebody with police training?
Well, I do think it's an advantage. We have, we trained the officer from Mercer County. When he was hired, he came up and spent 2 or 3 days with us. He's not a law enforcement guy. We trained Work County's litter control officer. He is a deputy sheriff that has been assigned to litter control solely. We trained, the problem with that is he gets pulled off the job a lot. I'll throw that out there on the Work County guy. We trained Lincoln County, and he's also not a certified law enforcement officer. The advantage of being a law enforcement officer is the ability to make traffic stops, and that's a very visible thing when your public sees, hey, those guys are out there and I saw that guy throw that cup out the window, and that really aggravates me when I see that trash along the road, and we got somebody there to do something about it. That's an advantage. We have access to the sheriff's office files and computers. The experience level we have of dealing with the public. My first 30 cases when I started this job, 25 of them were people that I dealt with as a deputy, and they already knew me. You know, they looked at me strange at first because I had a different uniform on, but they had dealt with me before. So there was no questioning the authority, there was no, and there was no, this is a rent-a-cop, there was none of that attitude with them. They knew who I was and they knew what I was there for. Another aspect of being a law enforcement officer that we've been able to work out is many times we'll find a trash pile. There'll be receipts in it, no names, but there'll be a receipt in it, and maybe one of them will be an EBT receipt from a state card. Because we're law enforcement, we can contact the agency in Charleston, send him the pictures of our trash pile and the pictures of the receipt, and within 24 to 48 hours, he will send me back who that EBT card was registered to. So it opened up an entirely different door for us to be able to solve some of these trash piles and charge people accordingly that we wouldn't have had before. And he's told me that the only reason he does that for us is because we are certified law enforcement. That's not to say that your litter control officer couldn't work side by side with your local law enforcement and on occasion have them to look up something for them or to request something for them. It's just they're not a standalone then. They're once again leaning on your other law enforcement.
Dependent on somebody.
Yes, ma'am.
How often do you go to court for these issues?
Generally about twice a month, average. I turned in 15 warrants the other day, and I jokingly told the magistrate that this was the end of the year clearance. These were folks I had worked with for a large part of the year, and they just finally quit and just refused to clean up anymore. And so I try to take advantage of the really good weather and to be out on the trails and on the roads and in the neighborhoods and save my reports for a rainy day. And so when we had those couple snowy mornings last week, then I sat down and typed up warrants on cases that I just couldn't resolve any other way.
What's the typical outcome when you go to magistrate court?
I have never lost a case in my 7 years on the job. The litter laws are written better than any laws that I've ever seen in the criminal code. They are very cut and dry, and if I find evidence that the trash in a place is yours, that is prima facie evidence that you're responsible for that trash. That's not to say that I don't use judgment. Case in point, I found a trash pile down next to Liberty High School on an old abandoned railroad bed that ended up being about 1,380 pounds. Found a lady's name in the trash and tracked it down to a little community called Eccles. Knocked on the door and she says, "Come in." Well, for law enforcement, you don't like to hear somebody say, "Come in." You want them to come to the door. Finally, she told me she was unable of making it to the door. I walked into her house and she was a very disabled lady. I knew that she didn't throw that trash over that hillside off that railroad bed. She told me she paid someone $50 to haul it off for her. But she didn't write him a check and she didn't get a receipt. So by law, she's responsible for that trash pile. But we were able to continue this conversation with the person who had actually hauled the trash off for her. And she took it upon herself to message him and say, "Hey, remember when you hauled that trash off for me? Could you take some more?" And he jumped on it and said yes. And she said, "How much did I pay you last time?" And he said, $60. And so we took that evidence and approached him about it, and his goose was cooked, so to speak. He said, "Yes, I did it, and can I clean it up?" And so anytime I have the opportunity to make the person who, or allow the person who dumped it to clean it up, then it works out great, because it's a whole lot harder and nastier to clean up than it was to dump after the bear and everything else has been in it. So if they are willing to clean it up, then I tell them I can't order you to do that, but if you clean it up and bring me a receipt, then you will receive a smaller citation. And so I usually write them for littering less than 100 pounds if that's the case, if they've cleaned it up, depending on the size of the trash pile.
question, Madam President. Would you restate your motion?
Motion to adopt it. Approve.
I want a motion.
Motion's, okay, then, let's hear it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, you might want to stick around a little bit.
My motion would be for staff to get with legal to work on a intergovernmental agreement between Harrison County Commission and Solid Waste Authority, and to bring it back for review and approval by the Harrison County Commission.
Can I ask a point of clarification? Would that involve a corresponding ordinance which would create the framework for the position within which the agreement's going to operate?
I guess I'd like to see what the Solid Waste Authority wants in an agreement before I would say yes to that. I'm not sure what they're looking to get out of it, and what they're expecting out of us without seeing that agreement.
Understood.
I mean, that's my only reservation, is not knowing. He says he doesn't really, he says he reports to both of us. Are they gonna be able, whoever we hire, is it gonna be the same thing, they'll report to us?
I mean, they're here, you can ask them. I mean, if you want to ask Solid Waste Authority.
This supersedes the three of us and whoever that is, whenever this agreement's set up.
But this is just to get to that.
That's what I made a motion to do.
I understand that. May I speak?
Yes,
I want to
ma'am.
make sure I understand what we're doing. That's, we need to draft this document before we can move further, correct?
Yeah, before you all adopt an agreement, you're gonna have to have adopted the framework in which the agreement would operate, which was my point of clarification. But I think Commissioner Hinkle wants to see what, this motion is more aimed at what the actual final terms would be with the Solid Waste Authority.
I think that's then make 17, how we're gonna update and protocols to accommodate.
Well, we can handle his motion. As I think it needs to be report to one. I truly think you get too many people involved, you're just asking for trouble.
And
I mean, that's just my personal opinion.
that's the pay grade above
We
being
already
Raleigh
have
County.
enough, we already have that issue, so.
The,
With permission, if I may. Sure. Michael Grunow, Chairman of the Harrison County Solid Waste Authority. I believe our interagency agreement spells out fairly specifically the particulars that I believe Commissioner Hinkle is asking about. The individual that is being hired would be a county employee, but would be housed at, would be paid indirectly through Billback, and directed by the Harrison County Solid Waste Authority only.
That's what the current agreement says, the current draft. We'll certainly work on that, and I think that your motion's appropriate under 16, because I was viewing them collectively, and we should certainly take them individually.
I mean, we still need to have some kind of agreement with the solid waste. Authority.
Correct.
I don't disagree with that.
Yes.
But as far as who they're gonna report to, I mean, that's gonna be the. So, Mr. Hinkle made the motion, and correct me whenever I misspeak, please, to go ahead and have an intergovernmental agreement prepared between the Harrison County Commission and Harrison County Solid Waste Authority.
On what each party,
On what each,
party expects or wants out of this agreement. In other words, if you wanna control it, or they're gonna control it, or joint control.
okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, let the opposition. Number 17.
thank you for the
Oh,
opportunity.
thank you again, appreciate you. Did you want to speak, Sheriff, to any of this?
No, I just agree with Commissioner Treecoff. This is a long time coming, and it's a good thing. I know there's a lot of little things to work out, but I'm glad to see we're going in this direction. The sheriff's office will support this endeavor in any way we can.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Okay, now number 17, review, discuss, consider reformation, amendment, and update of Harrison County nuisance ordinances, procedures, and protocols to accommodate litter control officer and litter control program.
Motion approved.
Well, we don't know what we're approving.
Yeah,
Barry, what do we have to do and what are we dropping, what are we picking up?
So the cleanest way to do this, in my opinion, is gonna be to just have a separate ordinance similar to Preston County, which addresses litter control.
That's where they formed a commission.
They formed, it's called a cleanup committee, but
Right.
that's actually the enforcement agency that's required under the statute. I went through it when you said that, Commissioner Hinkle.
Okay.
And so Harrison County's ordinance would be very similar to theirs, and the reason we would do that is so that we can still keep what we're doing with planning on the bigger real property, dilapidated structure, international property maintenance code side as well.
Okay.
So we don't want one with both in it.
Who put this piece of paper up here? There it says Raleigh County recently adopted an ordinance which is attached, which I view as the best model out there.
That was trade notes from
Yes.
before
Yeah,
several
right.
of our meetings.
So I was just-
I put it up there.
Yeah, and
So
Raleigh,
we skipped Fayette Valley and moved on to Preston County.
yeah, so I reviewed Raleigh County's ordinance when I drafted this in August, certainly did. In terms of the litter control side, we'll probably pull some of Raleigh County's language because it's brand new. There's no reason to recreate the wheel. They just adopted this on May 19th, 2020. So our litter control ordinance would have elements of Raleigh County's in it as well. Preston County's ordinance is much older than Raleigh County's. I think it's a 2009 or 2004 version. I can't recall off the top of my head because I've also looked at Mon. I've talked to Chris Sinelli and Marion about it as well. But we would use Raleigh for litter control as a model, yes.
Okay, so in Fayette County, guys, if somebody doesn't like what happens in magistrate court, where does it go from there? Does it go to a commission or does it go to circuit court?
Magistrate court cases have an automatic right of appeal into circuit court typically, and I believe that's how it would work. And that's one of the reasons why with the bigger property management, our procedure has always been to go straight to circuit court because we didn't feel like magistrate court would be productive. It's a little different here because the officer, whereas bigger dilapidated houses, we don't have on-spot citation authority, the litter control officer would have that ability, which would start the magistrate court process.
And that's mostly what you operate on is citation, right?
Citations, well, we have adopted the method ourselves, the two of us, the two litter control officers, that if a person doesn't have an operator's license, then we don't write them a citation, we go straight to a warrant. And the reason for that is the penalty for not paying a citation is the loss of your operator's license, or the suspension of your operator's license. So we have no teeth if we write them a ticket, they have no incentive to pay it. So other than that, we go with citations, but if they don't have a driver's license, and a lot of people don't, then we will issue warrants if they don't do what the notice of violation requires.
Okay, so Trey, we're gonna stay away from the commission under this?
The litter control, it's gonna depend on the intergovernmental agreement. Okay. In terms of day-to-day, and who oversees, or whether there's joint reporting, or you want quarterly reporting, or anything like that. But then in terms of the agency, there's gonna be a separate, we could call it cleanup committee like Preston, we could call it enforcement agency that will hear the complaints differing from the current nuisance process for the bigger property issues. The bigger structures anyway. Gross weight on litter might be bigger.
Okay. So I mean, it seems to me there's multiple ways that they're doing it, and Preston County's doing it.
It's different all over the state. It's different in Mercer. Sometimes it's structured differently entirely. but there's a lot of variance, but I really liked when I did a survey, Raleigh County's ordinance. It's recently updated, it's very thorough. You probably drafted that. Parts
I
of
did not.
Input.
Maybe. You mentioned circuit court, through December of 2020, we had done 254 warrants from 14 to 20, and only one of those warrants did I have to go to circuit court. Only one of them appealed to circuit court.
Commissioner Ford?
So, Trey, if we take what Raleigh County's done and look at what the kind of agreement so that everybody's on the same, and then we can evaluate the two.
Yes, sir. That today would be to move forward with the process of preparation and to present, and I hate to do this to myself, but hopefully by early next year, so we can try to tie it to a calendar year, present a framework for you all to consider.
And that's your motion, correct, Mr. Treehouse? Okay. Mr. Treehouse made the motion to move forward. Trey will come back with us sometime after the first of the year. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. I want to thank everybody for their hard work in getting us to this point, whoever has been involved.
Yeah, this is huge, guys.
Okay. Administrator's report, I believe, is up next.
We met with the 911 advisory board yesterday to discuss the 911 pay, looking at adjusting it and why we feel it's important. I know Commissioner Hinkle wanted that. They agree and support us looking into it, adjusting if needed, and they're willing to write a letter of support if that's what you would like. Met with Mike Book, talked about the projects Parks has going on and see how much that our maintenance department can help their different projects. They do not have another meeting till sometime in January probably, but as of right now, there's not one scheduled. Had a meeting with the contractors for the GSA last week, even though there have been some delays at the very beginning. It's nice to see the progress that we are making next door. Starting to work on a game plan for the move to next door, not only the move, but what will become of the space here in the courthouse. Conducting interviews for 911 next week. We still have 2 openings. Notice of intent to change magisterial districts has been hung around the county with the supporting documentation hung here in the courthouse. It's on our website, our Facebook page, and published in the paper. Working with Wayne at the county garage and the sheriff's office to review our listed vehicles on our insurance policy, trying to clean up the list, including taking off any vehicles that we no longer have. Just doing a little bit of cleanup there. Nuisance properties, you know, I believe that the litter control officer will be another tool that we can use for this. Both animal control and planning department have been trying to work together. If they come across a property that has some animals, that has a lot of trash, they're trying to talk and coordinate and work well together. They're also trying to be more proactive than reactive whenever it comes to nuisance properties around the county. So, and that is all I have for now.
Good. Mr. Treehouse?
I don't have anything there.
Mr. Hinkle?
First I'd like, I apologize, we didn't do this at the beginning, so, prayers and thoughts are out to the people down in Kentucky and other areas of the country that's been hit by tornadoes. I don't know if our county has any excess, product, water, whatever, that our county can all look into, helping send something down to help those people. I'd like for staff to look into that, see what we can do to help.
I think they already.
May I comment on that real quick? We have looked into it. There's actually the ARVO ad for the state, West Virginia Voluntary Organizations Assisting in Disaster, has reached out to Kentucky to see how we can help. Right now, They're asking to slow donations because it's becoming a secondary disaster for them. They're having a hard time figuring out where to put all these donations that are coming in. But there are conversations happening around the county. We're willing to help with whatever they need, whenever they need. It's something we're definitely keeping an eye on.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, ma'am.
I have nothing.
Motion adjourned.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried.